Hey everybody, and welcome back to another live stream from Northeast Christian Apologetics. My name's Simon Williams, and tonight we are doing our Monday night book study. Happens every Monday night at 6 p.m. Thank you very much for those of you who are able to come out and spend some time with me, reading these books. So we are continuing our read of Tactics. Today is going to be a Steamroller. I talked about it a little bit today on Facebook, but hey Nick, how you doing, man? Good to see you. Sasha, love you. Thank you for coming out. So last week we talked about, was it last week that we talked about sibling rivalry and, last week we talked about taking the roof off. And that is basically just reductio ad absurdum. And you see the claims of the person that they're making, and then you take it to you take it on board, and you treat it as true, and then you see if there's any absurdities that follow from it. And so we went into a lot of detail on that last time, and today we're going to be talking about Steamroller. And Steamroller is a name that Greg Koukl has given to people who are overconfident, they're overbearing, they're often overwhelming. Nick says, got off work early, so you're able to make it to one. Sounds good, man. Glad to have you out. I appreciate whenever people show up, especially, and it's good to have people with contrary views as well on here. So looking forward to this. The things that Dr. Greg Koukl says in this can be used by anybody, and this is not limited to like apologetics discussions. These kinds of things are really helpful for any kinds of conversations if you're having, especially if they're like controversial in nature. And today there's a lot of opportunity to have controversial conversation. So, just a reminder, this book was written by Greg Koukl. Greg Koukl has a ministry called Stand to Reason, and I think it's a really good ministry. Definitely recommend checking it out. And as always, this is a book that you can get on Amazon.com, as well as ChristianBooks.com. And I don't update these pictures very often, so I do not know if these are the current prices, but this was what they were at when I took the picture, which was like, at this point, almost like 2 or 3 months ago. But if you don't have this book in your library, you really ought to. It's a really good book. Also, this is YouTube, so don't forget to subscribe. You can help me out by just subscribing, liking the content, also sharing it on social media. All right. I'm squinting a lot because I'm not wearing my glasses. My glasses are reflecting the lights down here way too much, and you can't see my eyes very well. So I'm trying to read the chat. I'm going to have to see if I can get it larger for my for my bad eyesight. Let me see if I can pop it out actually and increase the size. But yeah, right time for tax season. Yeah. Yeah. Our family was actually treated kindly this tax season. So, but yeah. All right. So, let's see here. So that's about it for that. We can jump over to the book now and start to reading it and discussing it. And if you ever have any comments, don't forget to leave them in the chat. Don't forget to give me some your thoughts. We can discuss them more thoroughly. So let's jump over. So this, I don't expect that there's going to be crazy stuff here. It's been a while since I read this chapter, but we'll see. All right, so let me change this. All right, so Greg Koukl says, few people readily admit that their beliefs are wrong. Some put up a real fight, even when your points are reasonable and your manner is gracious. Did you ever wonder why people do that? Why do people ignore good arguments? I think there are 4 reasons for resistance, and I would like to explain what those are. Then I'll give you a step-by-step plan to deal with that overconfident, overbearing, and often overwhelming interrupter called a steamroller, or I call a steamroller. So when arguments don't work. In Chapter 2, I talked about the importance of arguments, not angry squabbles or silly quarrels, but points of view buttressed by reasons. Jesus used them, Paul used them, Peter used them. We should use them too. All right, just a second. When arguments are done well, they honor God, but arguments have limits. They don't always work. When that happens, some people are tempted to think that arguments themselves are useless. This is a mistake. If you're searching for that perfect line of logic capable of subduing any objection, you're wasting your time. There is no magic, no silver bullet, no clever turn of thought or phrase that's guaranteed to compel belief. Yes, rational objections can be a barrier to belief. The Christian message simply doesn't make sense to everyone, or it raises questions or counterexamples that make it difficult for some to even consider Christianity until those issues are addressed. But rational appeals often fail to persuade for other reasons. At least 3 additional issues may compel the person you're talking with to ignore your point. They have nothing to do with clear thinking, even when objections based on reasons are the first to surface. If your thoughtful response fails to have an impact, it is not acknowledged, or worse, doesn't even seem to have been noticed, maybe one of the following reasons is lurking in the shadows. First, people have emotional reasons to resist. Many have had annoying experiences with Christians or painful encounters with abusive churches. Others realize that to embrace Christianity would be to admit that cherished loved ones now dead entered eternity without forgiveness and with one fate awaiting them: darkness, despair, and suffering forever. Emotionally, this is something people simply cannot bear. Others know they would face the rejection of family and friends, or perhaps suffer financial loss, physical harm, or even death if they considered Christ. These powerful deterrents can make the most cogent arguments seem inadequate and unconvincing. Second, some balk because of prejudice. Their minds are already made up. They have prejudiced your view before ever really listening to your reasons. They are interested only in defending their entrenched position, not in considering other options. Cultural influences are powerful here. Resistance based on prejudice can be especially strong for those with religious beliefs or with non-religious beliefs like naturalism, held with religious intensity. Often Christians defend their denominational distinctives in a prejudiced way. This is very true. I've seen this a lot in Christian circles, especially online. They plow ahead with blinders on, spouting the party line with no thought even to the merits of an alternative view. But this isn't just Christian denominationalism either. This happens with, like Democrats and Republicans and things of that nature. You get some talking points, and people will just completely ignore what you say and just jump right into the party line or the party rhetoric real quick. And remember, when we're engaging in conversation, we need to avoid that kind of tendency. We need to be focused on learning what who the person that we're talking to is, what they actually believe, and then and the reasons for why they believe what they believe. Okay, remember the first 2 Columbo tactics. Asking what do you mean by that, and why do you believe that way. All right, so, and always, and I know I harp on this a lot, but always ask yourself the question, why should I prefer the worldview that I believe in? Why should I prefer my worldview over an alternative worldview? Okay, we need to be critically evaluating our own worldview in order to better understand why it is we prefer the worldview that we have. And if you change your worldview, that's a continuous question. Why do I prefer this worldview over an alternative? So finally, some people are just plain pig-headed. Their reason for resistance is no more elegant or sophisticated than simple rebellion. Jesus said that people love the darkness rather than the light because their deeds are evil. John 3:19. So they persist in their mutiny, waging to the bitter end their unwinnable battle against God. As you can see, you and I have limited control over how other people respond to us. This is largely in God's hands. We can remove some of the negatives or dispel some of the fog, and we ought to try to do both. But at the end of the day, a person's deep-seated rebellion against God is a problem only a supernatural solution can fix. When someone forcefully disagrees with you, do not expect them to surrender quickly. Changing beliefs is not easy to do, especially when a lot is at stake. Usually it is a slow process for someone to admit they are mistaken about something important. Sometimes a person's impulse to resist is so strong he will get verbally abusive. You need a plan to help keep you in the driver's seat of conversations with those people who have controlling personalities and bad manners. The tactic I suggest is a defensive maneuver called Steamroller. All right. So this is it's important to acknowledge this, that when we're having conversations like this, and he's said this earlier in the book, we are not trying to win people over to our side. We're not trying to, we do want to convince them, but we should not be endeavoring to do that as a goal. Like, we must do this or else the conversation is a failure. Remember, all you need to do as a Christian or anybody having conversations is place a pebble in their shoe, something that they can think on, something that they can consider while they are living their life and doing things and talking with other people, something that they can think about. And we also, as Christians, need to remember that when we are talking with people, we are planting seeds and watering. It's okay not to harvest. It's okay not to get the conversion right away. And one other thing to mention here also is that Greg Koukl's right here. People do consider Christianity to be there's a lot of hurdles to overcome, like emotional barriers as well as intellectual barriers. And apologetics' main goal is to kind of break down those intellectual barriers. And I've been talking about this in our Apologetics 101 series, part 1 at Castle Church recently. And in order to more effectively bring down intellectual barriers of somebody else, you need to have those intellectual barriers brought down yourself. So you need to be wondering, like, what is preventing me from having a deeper understanding of Christianity? What's preventing me from having a stronger faith in Christianity? And then explore those. Challenge Christianity, challenge your worldview. What reasons would prevent me from having a deeper faith, and then explore those. Look for answers and look for deeper challenges. Some people are afraid to test their worldview, and you shouldn't be. These things are very important. A lot of people from a non-Christian perspective think that Christianity has an extremely high price tag. And so, like when you have to talk about doing fellowship with other believers and coming to church and reading the Bible and exercising spiritual virtues, resisting things that the Bible calls sin. These things are difficult for a lot of people at first. And so it's kind of like an inverse Pascal's wager, well, we don't know that Christianity is true, and I don't want to have to, and this is the only life that I'm going to live, so I don't want to waste my time doing Christian stuff when I could be doing whatever I want. And so we have to understand that point of view and see how we can actually address those kinds of concerns. And the best way to do that is to look into it yourself. Like, why is it that you think that it is a good thing to to spend time in God's community, to read the Bible, to pray and worship God, and really exercise and actually perform the tasks of your faith. Why is it that somebody else should do that? Nick says a high price tag, a Bible. It goes for at least $3 these days. Yeah. Yeah. I hand out Bibles all the time. So you don't even have to spend the $3. But yeah, when people talk about a price tag, they're talking about as in like you have to change your behavior significantly, so for at least some people live very virtuous lives naturally. And so they don't really have to change that much. But then again, you do have to acknowledge the fact that Christianity is telling you that you need to love God more than everything else, including family, friends, and up to including all of the universe. There is nothing that's more important than God. And that can be very difficult for some people. All right, so Koukl continues with the Steamroller. Once in a while, you will encounter people who try to overpower you. They don't overwhelm you with facts or arguments. Rather, they roll over you with the force of their personalities. Their challenges come quickly, one after another, keeping you from collecting your wits and giving a thoughtful answer. If this sounds familiar, then you have been steamrolled. Men are frequently guilty of steamrolling, especially when talking with women, but women can be offenders too. Steamrollers have a defining characteristic. They constantly interrupt. As soon as you begin to answer, they hear something they don't like in your explanation, interrupt, then pile on another objection or challenge. If you try to go down the new rabbit trail, they interrupt again, changing the subject, firing new challenges, yet never really listening to anything you say. You find yourself constantly off balance and on the defensive. Some steamrollers are more distracted than discourteous. They're unable to stick to a line of thinking for more than a few moments. So they bounce around in a disorderly way, launching out with new challenges without absorbing the point you've been making. They're not disingenuous, but they're not really listening either. So you're not making progress, regardless of how good your answers are. Though there are benevolent steamrollers, more excitable but not hostile. Overly excitable but not hostile. Most are insincere with their questions. Steamrollers are not usually interested in answers. They are interested in winning through intimidation. It is easier for them to ask the hard questions than to listen to an answer that is more than a shallow 10-second soundbite. Because steamrollers are so aggressive, you must manage them aggressively, though you don't need to be rude. For some Christians, it will take courage and intestinal fortitude to face up to such a powerhouse at first. However, once you learn the following 3 steps to stop a steamroller, you will discover that getting back into the driver's seat is easier than you thought. All right, so Nick McNeely says, this description reminds me of the modus operandi of presup. I believe you on that. There can be very aggressive presuppositionalists out there. And so what McNeely's talking about is this apologetical tactic called presuppositionalism, where you assume the truth of the Christian worldview, and then from the truth of the Christian worldview, you're able to explain why the world is the way that it is. And a lot of presuppositionalists will say that the only reason why even non-Christians believe in like the orderliness of the universe and the objective moral values and duties and things like that is because they actually believe that. Some of them will say that it's because they actually do believe that God exists. And some of them will even go so far as to say is that they actually believe that Christianity is true. So, and there can be a lot of aggressive pre-suppers out there for sure. They really need to read Tactics. Rob says, yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that loving God with all your heart, might, and soul will actually increase your love for others and not reduce it. Yeah. Yes. excellent point there. Like when you love God, that kind of love should flow out to other people because other people are made in God's image, So what we're supposed to be doing is increasing in love generally, instead of becoming isolationist and cliquey and things of that nature. We should be, it should give us a sense of wanting to bring more people into God's kingdom, to reach out in love and talk to people. All right, so step one, Koukl continues, stop him. The first step in dealing with a steamroller is a mild one. Even though you may feel pushed to your limits by the annoyance, don't fire back in kind, guaranteeing a head-on collision. Don't buckle at the knees either. Once your opponent has intimidated you and knows it, you've lost, says William Dembski, a veteran of many encounters with hostile challengers of intelligent design. Instead, your first move should be a genial request for courtesy. Stop the intrusion by momentarily putting the discussion on pause. Then briefly request permission to continue your point without being interrupted. Use a little body language if you need to, raising your hand for a bit for emphasis. It takes longer to describe it than to do it. Simply hold up your hand and gently say, "Sorry, I'm not quite finished yet." And then continue. Often this is all you need to do to restore order to the conversation. If the steamroller is especially aggressive, be calm and wait for an opening. Do not try to talk over him if he isn't cooperating at first. When you get a pause, don't be afraid to ask for adequate time. Quickly negotiate an informal agreement. You ask him to give you something, patience and courtesy, so that you can give him something in return, an answer. Here are some variations. Is it okay with you if I take a few moments to answer your question before you ask another? I'll give you a chance to respond when I'm done. Will that work? That's not a simple issue. I need a moment to explain myself. Is that okay? Let me respond to your first challenge. When I'm done, you can jump in again with another. Is that all right? That's a good question. It deserves a decent answer, but it will take a few minutes. Are you okay with that? Yeah, so these are really important. And I got to emphasize again that tactics is written with the idea that you're going to be doing face-to-face conversations. So these aren't really tactics that are useful for like Facebook discussions and stuff like that. All right, so notice the negotiation here. You make a petition and he grants it. With more aggressive steamrollers, it is especially important for them to verbally consent to your request. Of course, if a person answers no to any of these questions, you might ask him why he brought the challenge up in the first place. Be careful not to let annoyance or hostility creep into your voice. That would be a mistake, especially with this kind of person. Don't let a steamroller get under your skin. Being defensive and belligerent always looks weak. Instead, stay focused on the issues, not on the attitude. Talk calmly and try to look confident. Be sure to respond adequately to one question before you are forced to tackle another. But don't take unfair advantage of the time you buy with this little negotiation. Make your point, then ask, does that make sense to you? This invites him back into the conversation. Give him the courtesy of offering you a reply without interruption. You do not want to be a steamroller yourself. This first step is especially effective with a benevolent steamroller hopping from topic to topic in a disconnected way. Stay friendly while gently restraining their enthusiastic disorder. Keep them on track with one point before you let them pull you off to another. All right, so there was something on here. Yeah, it definitely is easy. I find that it's easier to become hostile online than in person. When in person, I'm much more, patient and humble and things of that nature. But online, I definitely, the distance seems to make you become more aggravated. So this is something I really need to take on more effectively when I'm doing online conversations. All right. So Rob says, it's very interesting that it states there that if you become defensive, it makes you look weak. I always become defensive. I didn't know it made me look weak. All right, so remember, like this is like like putting you on the back foot to become defensive or offended, that kind of stuff. You can go on the defense, as in like providing an answer to justify your position. But yeah, if you're like looking like you're no longer confident in your position or impatient and becoming aggressive in the wrong way, then yeah, it does make you look weak. All right, it's all about being patient and aggressive, but in the right way. You want to be assertive. All right, so step 2, shame him. If the steamroller breaks trust with your agreement, or if you can't succeed in stopping him in the first place to negotiate an orderly conversation, and proceed to phase 2 of the steamroller tactic. This step is more aggressive. It also takes a bit more courage because you will now be directly confronting the rudeness of an impolite person. You might consider using his name at this point. It will often soften the exchange. What's in a name? Plenty. A person's name is sweet to him. Keep this in mind when conversations begin to turn hostile or begin to take a hostile turn. At the first sign of tension, pause and ask their name if you don't know it already. Then use it in a friendly manner as you continue. It helps take the edge off the encounter. And that might be a part of the reason why online encounters can become so hostile, is because we don't really know that person, even though we see their name and we don't use their name. You know, we're not treating other people as actual people. Actually, Nick just asked, any idea why online conversations make it easier for you to get aggravated, I believe, or aggravated. I think it is because I fail to acknowledge that the other person is a person. So Rob, I see it's the other way around for me. If I catch onto a facial expression of sarcasm, I become very defensive. Yeah, sarcasm can definitely be an annoying thing to deal with. But make sure you just stay strong, and you can just address that. Like, I see that you're being sarcastic with me right now. I don't appreciate the tone that you're taking. I want to have a respectful dialogue with you. Is that possible? Those kinds of things, those kinds of questions. All right, so Greg Koukl continues. You tried to stop the steamroller. That didn't work. Now you want to shame him for his bad manners. But you want to do it with integrity. Start by taking the same basic approach you did in step 1. This time, though, make an explicit request for courtesy. First, ignore any new challenges he has introduced. Do not follow his rabbit trails. Second, address the steamroller problem directly. If you're not able to get the floor right away, let him talk. When he finally pauses, look him in the eye and calmly say something like the following: "Can I ask you a favor? I'd love to respond to your concern, but you keep breaking in. Could I have a few moments without being cut off to develop my point? Then you can tell me what you think. Is that okay with you? Can I ask you a quick question? Do you really want a response from me? At first, I thought you did, but when you continue to interrupt, I get the impression all you want is an audience. If so, just let me know and I'll listen. But if you want an answer, you have to give me time to respond. So do you want me to respond or just listen? I need to know before I can continue. Or, and here's what I have in mind. You make your point, and I'll be polite and listen. When you're done, it will be your turn to be polite to me and not interrupt while I respond. Then I'll let you have your say without breaking in. I need to know if that's okay with you. If not, this conversation is over. What would you like to do?" All right, so Notice that each example I offered is progressively more direct. You have to challenge, or you have to judge which one is appropriate for the circumstances you face. The last one is very aggressive. If you started this way, you would be out of line. With some people, though, a direct approach like this is the only thing that will save the conversation. Use it only after the other person has used up a lot of grace. Remember, steamrollers are strong customers who sometimes need to be addressed with equal strength, yet coupled with civility. This can be harder if you're an easygoing sort with a gentle spirit, but unless you toughen up at this stage, you'll get nowhere. Step 2 should work. The steamroller might even be ashamed and apologize. If he does, accept the gesture graciously. Then return to the original issue and deal with it. Say, let's go back to the beginning. Your challenge, as I understand it, is this. Repeat the question. Now, here is how I would like to respond. The second step is effective at taming even the most belligerent steamroller. Don't be snippy or smug. Stay focused, stay pleasant, stay gracious, but stay in the driver's seat. If this doesn't work, go immediately to step 3. Leave him. First, you stop him, then you shame him. If that doesn't work, you leave him. When all else fails, let it go. Walk away. If the steamroller won't let you answer, listen politely until he's finished, then drop it. Tell him, let him have the satisfaction of having the last word, then shake the dust off your feet and move on. Wisdom dictates not wasting time with this kind of person. When I face an aggressive challenger, I often give him the last word. Not only is this gracious, it's also powerful, conveying a deep sense of confidence in one's own view. Instead of fighting for the final say so, give it away. Make your concluding point clearly and succinctly. Then say, I'll let you have the last word. But don't break this promise. Grant him his parting shot and then let it rest. This particular step is really effective online as well. This one, if you're in a heated conversation, if you're in a conversation and the other person is being really disrespectful and things of that nature, you can say what you have on your mind and then say, this is my last comment on this discussion with you, or this, I'm not going to pursue this conversation any further, or you may have the last word, like he says in the book, and just let it go. It's your mental health is way more important than trying to win a conversation online. All right. So, Nick says, stop him, shame him, then leave him. Are we talking about discussions or bumpy bad boyfriend? Yeah, no kidding. I was actually thinking the same thing. And I think it works for both, with dumping a bad boyfriend. All right. This last step is dictated by a simple bit of insight, and not everyone deserves an answer. This may sound odd at first. Characteristically, an ambassador is always ready, alert for any chance to represent Christ, not backing away from a challenge or an opportunity sometimes, though. The wisest course of action may be to bow out graciously. Jesus warned, do not give what is holy to dogs, and do not throw your pearls before swine. Matthew 7:6. He followed his own advice too. Jesus was amazingly tight-lipped before Pilate. He gave him no answer. John 19:9. At times, he was also evasive with religious leaders intent on tricking him. Neither will I tell you what authority I do these things. Matthew 21:27. And that passage is really interesting. I really liked that interaction because they were asking him by what authority does he do these things, and he was like, I'll answer your question after you answer mine. The baptism of John, was it of heaven or was it of man? And they decided not to answer. And it's really interesting, but maybe I'll make a video exploring that. All right, so anyway, Koukl continues, knowing when to step back requires the ability to separate the dogs and the hogs from the lost sheep looking for a shepherd. But how do you know when someone has crossed the line? When do we have an obligation to speak, and when should we have our pearls for another time, save our pearls for another time? Part of the answer can be found in Jesus' next words in Matthew 7:6, or they will trample the pearls under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. Be generous with the truth, except when someone has shown utter contempt for the precious gift of being offered. He will simply trample it in the mud and then viciously turn on you. If you sense someone pawing the turf and readying for a charge, it may be time to leave. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your effort on people like this. Save your energy for more productive encounters. Say something like, "It seems to me this conversation is not going in a productive direction. I'm going to let you have the last word, and then I'm moving on." Or, "I'm having a hard time at getting my point across, so I'm going to just let it go for now. Thanks for your thoughts." Of course, there are times when you will find yourself in a Jeremiah situation, being faithful to speak the truth even though it falls on deaf ears. But those occasions are not the rule. Usually, wisdom dictates we ration our efforts. There is an exception to this principle, however. I have learned from my radio show that sometimes my real audience is not the person I'm talking to, but the people who are listening in, eavesdropping on the conversation. This happens more often than you may think, even if you are not a radio host. Sometimes a word spoken to a hardened heart bounces off and hits a soft one. You may not even know that anyone else is listening. Years later, you discover that the Holy Spirit had a different audience in mind for your efforts. This has happened to me a number of times. Lee Strobel calls this ricochet evangelism. Dealing with a steamroller is rarely a smooth and tidy enterprise. When you encounter abuse, don't take it personally. It's not about you. It's about Christ. When you falter, don't get discouraged with the process. I get caught flat-footed too sometimes. Take it as a learning experience for the next time around. The principle: make the best of the opportunities you have. Then trust the Holy Spirit to be the witnessing partner who makes the difference. You do your part, then let God do his. So what we learned this chapter. In this chapter, we discovered that there is more than one reason why a person might reject our thoughtful arguments. There is nothing magical about a sound line of logic. For some people, reason doesn't matter. Some other barrier stands in the way. Sometimes people have emotional reasons for resisting. Bad experiences with Christians or with churches or pressures from family or culture are enough to blind a person to our appeals. Others balk because of prejudice. They never really consider our message because their minds are already made up. Finally, for many people, the best explanation for their resistance is simple rebellion. The fundamental problem with many people is that they do not want to bend the knee to their sovereign. Finally, we learned how to recognize and restrain a steamroller. Steamrollers overpower you with strong personalities and interrupt constantly. I suggested 3 steps to manage a steamroller and regain control of the conversation. Step 1, stop the interruption graciously but firmly. Then briefly negotiate an agreement. Step 2, shame him for making a direct request for courtesy. Correction, I think I said shame him for making. So step 2, shame him by making a direct request for courtesy. Step 3, leave. Never match a steamroller's incivility with rudeness. Instead, let him have the last word, then calmly let it go. All right, we've reached the end of the chapter, and you know what that means. That means we get to celebrate. Woohoo! Yeah, we got it. I'm pretty sure it's the only chapter. All right, yeah. Yep. We're up to chapter 15 in our book, and it's going to be Road Scholar. Looking forward to it. Thanks for being with me through the whole book, guys. Thanks for coming out. Really appreciate it. Oop. Yep, don't forget. I always forget to turn that off. But yeah, don't forget to subscribe. All right. So, I saw... All right, let's see here. Nick says, I have noticed that especially online people in the actual discussion aren't interested in honest debate, but the rest of the group is watching. I've got logic tutoring gigs like that. Yeah, I believe you. Yeah, and you would be surprised at how many people are just reading the comments. I've gotten emails and direct messages from people from conversations that I've had online that were like weeks or months in the past. Yeah, people are reading those things, so you want to make sure, especially as a Christian, that you want to be engaging with people patiently and finding a writing voice that is Christ honoring. And that's something that honestly I still need to work on. When I'm online, sometimes I can be quite aggressive, and yeah, my tactic is different online than it is in person. But yeah, we're coming close to the end of Tactics. We're on chapter 15. There's 19 chapters. So, but if you guys are interested in the book, I think this book is really handy for everyone, and all the other previous chapters are available online. But anyway, yeah, thanks for coming out and doing this book study with me. That happens every Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, and God bless.
Hey, before you go, I hope you enjoyed today's enlightening discussion during our Christian Apologetics book study. It's always a blessing to come together to explore our faith and grow in our understanding. Your participation means the world to me, and I'm grateful for your continued support of Northeast Christian Apologetics. Remember, you can stay connected with me and access valuable resources by visiting my website at nechristianapologetics.com. There you'll find a wealth of articles, videos, and recommended reading material to deepen your knowledge of Christian apologetics. If you're as passionate as I am about equipping believers to defend their faith and engage in meaningful conversations, you can also support this ministry in various ways. One way to support this work is through patreon.com. By becoming a patron, you'll have access to exclusive content, early access to our discussions, and a chance to connect with like-minded individuals who share your passion for Christian apologetics. If Patreon is not your style, some people prefer to give me a one-time tip. And if you'd like to do that, then feel free to do so through Venmo or Cash App. But of course, there are many ways to support me. By praying for this ministry, sharing the content on social media, or simply spreading the word about what I do. Every bit of support goes a long way in helping me fulfill my mission. Once again, thank you for joining me today. Your presence and engagement enrich these discussions, and together, we're on a journey to strengthen our faith and share the good news with others. Stay tuned for more exciting book studies, thought-provoking discussions, and opportunities to grow your Christian apologetics journey. I look forward to seeing you again.